You ever play this game called Eternal Sonata? Yeah, me neither, but I always wanted to try it out. It's a JRPG on the Xbox 360, loosely based on Frédéric Chopin's life. I've seen games that try to cover the lives of artists, but they work more like interactive galleries. Instead of following that trend, Starry Knight tells an abridged account of Vincent van Gogh's life and his struggles, but it requires a bit more active participation on the player's part. Starry Knight is a 2021 2D hack-and-slash by Peace Boulevard Games. You play as Vincent van Gogh, portrayed as a Starry Knight, with a brush as a sword and a palette as a shield. Starry Knight looks and feels like a game that Iron Pineapple would cover for 5 minutes in one of his "I played a bunch of Dark Souls knockoffs" videos. The entire game is comprised of 6 screens that use Van Gogh's masterpieces as their backdrops. Each screen features a boss that Van Gogh must face. When Van Gogh beats a boss, he gains that boss's powers for subsequent fights. There are 2 parts to the game's story. The first part covers Van Gogh's early life up until he moves into the Yellow House at Arles. The second part covers Van Gogh's lowest point, where he suffers hallucinations that culminate in the loss of his ear. So, how does Starry Knight play? Van Gogh can move left and right with the A and D keys, and jump with space. He swings his brush with J and brings up his palette to block with K. There's controller support for this game, but I recommend using the keyboard. I had some weird connection issues with my controller where Van Gogh would keep moving left or right, even though I let go of the stick. Also, his movements feel very loosey-goosey for a controller. Using keys gives you the pixel-perfect feedback you need to play this game. And this game is hard. Not surprising since it's a 2D Souls-like. Just like its inspiration, much of the challenge in this game comes from trial and error, and figuring out the gimmick for each encounter. The bosses for the first half of the game are all named as if they're subjects of an art piece. The Reaper, the Flying Fox, the Thresher, the Sculpture. The first half eases you into the boss mechanics. Some bosses are straightforward with their challenge and attack patterns. Some have phase changes once their health bars are halfway down or completely emptied. Once Van Gogh reaches the Yellow House at Arles, the first chapter ends and the second chapter begins. Van Gogh then works backwards towards the first screen, and the bosses now take on a more sinister aspect of their previous versions. Instead of following the naming conventions of the first set of bosses, the Chapter 2 bosses are named after Van Gogh's insecurities and mental struggles. Discouragement, poverty, madness, despair. There's no longer a "the" at the beginning of their names to depersonalize the bosses. They're a part of Van Gogh that he has to face. The change in music also reflects a shift in mood in the second half. The music in Chapter 1 was soothing in contrast to the fights that Van Gogh faced at that time. It's meant to show that, even though Van Gogh's path as an artist was full of challenges, it was still manageable back then. The music in Chapter 2 gives off a more desperate mood in Van Gogh's mind. It sounds more anxious now, more oppressive. This culminates in his fight with Madness, where the music becomes part of the boss fight. The characters that populate the background of the fight shift and take over Van Gogh's perception of reality. They become hazards in the screen that Van Gogh has to fight or avoid, and you need to pay attention to the clues that the game provides to figure out the boss gimmick. This is the fight where Van Gogh cuts off his ear, and the game replaces his model to reflect that event. After Van Gogh's fight with Madness, the music calms down again, but it still carries a somber, crestfallen tone when he faces despair. But now that we've cleared Chapter 2, it's time to face the final boss. I really love this moment. It's a mirror match with Van Gogh's younger self. The game says so much with a single word. Stranger. He can barely recognize the man in front of him. This is the hardest fight in the game, but you won't know that until you're deep into the fight. I won't give away what happens, but this one had me rapidly shifting between offense and defense in a way that no other bosses required. I can only describe the final boss with one word: struggle. And that's the point. We're struggling to overcome these bosses, just like Van Gogh was struggling all his life with discouragement, with poverty, with despair, with madness. Whenever Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of Dark Souls and other big From Software titles, is asked why his games are so hard, Miyazaki always repeats the same answer. He wants players to struggle so that they can appreciate the challenge they faced. If a victory is given to you, like a post-game star in Mario Party, does that victory even matter? That's why Starry Knight is a Souls-like. When Iron Pineapple covers a game, he tends to focus on the mechanics of the game and how it borrows from other Souls titles. And you can do that with Starry Knight. But I think the more interesting takeaway from this game is how it gets the player to understand in an abstract way what Vincent van Gogh was going through in his life. Play Starry Knight. It's about $3 on Steam, and worth the struggle.